Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll start in just a few minutes. I'll start in just 1 minute. Hi, welcome. I'm Olivia Clare Friedman. I'm so glad that you could join us for this poetry reading. I am the author of An Arm Fixed to a Wing, which is a book of poems just out this month from LSU Press. And I am so grateful to LSU Press for just being a dream press to publish with, and also for hosting this great reading, which I'm really glad that we can do and that we can do it like this in this format. This is my fourth book. So, my first book was also a book of poems called The 26-Hour Day. And my second book was a book of short stories called Disasters in the First World. My third book was published in 2022 by Grove Atlantic, and it was a novel, and it's titled Here Lies, and that was just published just a few years ago by Grove. And then this is my fourth book, the Book of Poems. So it's my fourth book, but it's my second book of poems. And I not only write both poetry and fiction, but I write both short stories and the novel, under the genre of fiction. So I feel at this point, having been writing those for a while now, I feel very fulfilled writing in each of those genres. I know I'd feel fulfilled in writing in just one of them, but for me, this is what works really well, and really is just a wonder for my writing life. And I'm happy to talk about that more. I know we'll have a little discussion after the reading, a little Q&A, and I'm happy to discuss any of that if you want to talk about writing in different genres or the influence of of different genres on my work. Um, I also should mention that I'm an associate professor of English and creative writing at University of Southern Mississippi, and I also direct the creative writing program here, which we call the Center for Writers. We have a great undergraduate and graduate program here in creative writing. So I'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to read for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A afterwards. I know that you'll be able to put questions in the chat, I believe. And I'm also told that you'll receive a link to purchase the book with a code with a pretty significant discount to purchase the book. So if you like what you hear, I hope that you'll consider supporting poetry and supporting LSU Press and purchasing the book at that link. I'm going to start with the second poem from the book, and it's called Before. You remember this, don't you? We said later we'd remember, and now it's later, do you? You wrote your brother, then alive, a long email. Back when you wrote and read for hours, we both did. And we slept till 11, back when we slept so late. And if I don't write this down, it will all fall away. But even I can't remember which city that was, which bus we'd taken, what we drunk the night before. We'd been trying to save money. We didn't eat, but we drank. And that 1 a.m. bartender gave us free rounds while we sang not sure what, knowing it was Italian. And we drank not sure what, because why? It was free, our cups full, and then not. And all we could do was walk back how we'd come, stumbling toward our anonymous room. I'm going to read a poem that comes later in the book. And what you'll hear in this poem is the title is actually a line in the poem. So, many times we'll see books of poems that have the titular poem, the poem that has the same title as the book. And I chose to choose a line from a poem for the title of this book. And one of the things that really kind of strikes me about this poem in particular for the book is that it's an older one. So my last book of poems was 10 years ago, and I've written quite a few poems since then. Not all of them made it into the book, and many of them are newer. But the ones that are older, they really kind of stood the test of time to me. And you always look at older work and you think, you were a different self. Maybe you wouldn't write that poem now, or maybe you would, but you still really love it. I only put work in that I really loved and really spoke to me. So, and the rest of the poems I still have, but they're not in the book. So this is an older poem that really stood out to me to still include in the book. It's called "When My Reverence is Idle, I Stand Stunned." I'll read that title again because it bears repeating. When my reverence is idle, I stand stunned. I have an hour to watch the river. It's holy, they say. On the bridge, men talk and they don't look down. 3 boys steer a sculpture in a cart, an arm fixed to a wing. One town to share the ghost of God with vigilant men who lay the wing out to dry, clumsy in their gloves. I turn back to my book. Glass boats take marble Gabriels to walled cities. Men stand still. They're hungry for religion, and the boats don't sink. I close the book to count people I have loved, approximating. I'll show you too when we get to some of the other poems so that you can see what they look like on the page since we're in this format. I can hold the page up to the screen if you don't have the book in front of you, and I can show you a little bit there. So for example, this poem that I'm about to read, it's it's pretty short, and it's just one stanza. And I like doing that when we're in this format, showing you what they look like lineated. This one's called Reading About Florence. And, and it's also about that last poem we had, the speaker was reading a bit from a book. And in this poem, too, the speaker is reading from a book. I had these periods in my life where I moved around a lot for years and I traveled a lot. And then suddenly that stopped for a little bit. And I know a lot of us went through that too when we were on lockdown. And so this poem comes out of that, out of thinking about, that time when I was moving around a lot and also traveling, taking lots of trips. And then that stopped for a period of my life just because of the different season of life that I was in. And then also, like I said, many of us experienced that on lockdown as well. This is called Reading About Florence. I am not in Florence. In fact, not anywhere near. Years ago, I was. Now I'm at home, a chipped dish of yogurt, my child sleeping in the next room, this book in my lap, a book about both beauty and ugliness. The neighbor's dog is incessant. I pretend the barks are music. I read to their rhythm in my dusky room about a day in the life, about both beauty and disaster. That poem references a child sleeping in the next room. There are quite a few poems in the book that are on the theme of motherhood, and you'll see that a little bit referenced in some of the poems that I'm about to read. But there's more in the book. This next one is interesting because it actually came from a short story that I was working on. And usually with short stories, I really try to stay the course. And if I'm kind of struggling with it, I'll keep revising it. Maybe I'll put it down for a little bit and then take it out again, see what I can do with it. I really do. If I can't quite get it on that first draft, I really do work with subsequent drafts to get it to a place where I want it, and then I tend to put it away for a little bit and then come back to it so I can revise it. This draft, though, of this short story, I couldn't quite get to where I wanted it. And so I decided to make it a poem, and I decided to go into the short story and find the sentences that I wanted to make into lines, and then I edited the poem from there. So it's the poem is not at all a short story length. It's just this length of the page right here. So I just took a little slice of it and then edited it from there. And then also thought about, the kinds of lines that I wanted to make with the sentences. It's almost a persona poem. I guess it is a persona poem. The speaker references her grandmother raising her. I had a relationship with my grandmother, but she didn't raise me, for example. So it's a little bit, it's, especially because it comes from fiction, it's a little bit more of a persona poem than perhaps my other poems are. And what I found though, when I took a slice of the story out and made it into a poem, is that last line of the poem really kind of showed me what I was meaning to write about in the short story. So I talk about that with my students, that sometimes it can be really, really helpful to take some prose and then put it into lines. And then you can keep it in lines if you want to, and it becomes a poem. Or you might put it back again into prose and it goes back to being a short story, but you've discovered things about the sentences or about the theme of the work. This is called Christmas Eve. On the bus ride home, Stars looked liquid. Trees bowed down. Memories gummed my brain. The time I'd been too reasonable about love. The unreasonable time, too. The time I saw maggots eating a frog. All of it ran together. I was rum drunk and cold. I hugged myself for warmth. My grandmother had raised me in the home she still lived in. I barely saw her. In my 40 years, I was in love only once, and even that was too much. On the bus, a few others were asleep or deep in their phones. 3 seats ahead, to my left, a woman was swathed in a puffer coat. A fleecy hood encircled her head. She was my age, maybe a little younger. In and out of sleep, her eyes would close, and when the bus rocked, her eyes would open. Her lashes were so long, I thought if I sat closer, I might hear the pulse of each blink. She had a face that looked like she could understand. I wanted to sit beside her. I wanted to tell her a few things for which I hoped to be forgiven. That it's that last sentence. I wanted to tell her a few things which I hoped could be forgiven, that I realized as I was writing the poem, really was at the heart of the short story that I was trying to write too. So I love that I made a discovery, about the story that I ended up not writing as a story when I wrote this as a poem. You can also see, the influence of prose there, in the sense that, or that it really started with prose, in the sense that there's a character there. I don't always write with characters in my poems, so it got me to a different place. The fact that I started, with fiction there, that repetition of the phrase "I wanted" at the end. I wanted to sit beside her. I wanted to tell her a few things for which I hope to be forgiven. That's anaphora, that repetition of a word or phrase, at the beginning of lines or sentences. And I love using anaphora, in my poems, and also in my sentences. And so that's one way that repetition from my poems has traveled over into my fiction writing, and then vice versa, into my poetry writing, is that kind of repetition, that anaphora. I'm going to read now from, there's a sequence of poems in here called camera poems, and it's an 8-page sequence, and or an 8-poem sequence rather. And I'm only going to read 4 poems from it, so you'll just get a taste of it. And it's a whole section of the book. Um, Many poets, myself included, love working in the form of a series. For me as a writer, it helps give me momentum on something. It also helps me think in terms of an arc, and fiction has helped me do that too. And then also, I think for the reader, it gives you some momentum, and it gives you, that arc, that thread that you can then read for in those poems. So, that's why many poets, myself included, like to write sequences. There is more of a narrative here, and there's dialogue. I'll try to, when I get to the dialogue, I'll try to speak it a little differently so you understand that it's dialogue in the poem. And I also have an acting background myself, and something like that is so memorable, both on stage and in front of the camera, that I'll always be writing about it. It was a big part of my life, and but I think those things are always a big part of your life, even if you did one play years ago. It's such a significant, um, memorable experience, and this is what's great about writing, is that it can really capture our passions and our obsessions, and, the things that really truly mean something to us throughout the years. We can change in so many ways, but the things that stay with us and that we keep writing about, those things are always in us. They really are. And so, I'm going to start with a poem called Lancashire. A lot of this poetry sequence is about the woman, the speaker, or rather, it's in third person. So the kind of main character of the poems thinking about what it's like to be watched and have the camera on her quite a bit. So yeah, I'll just jump right in. This is called Lankershim, which is the name of a big street in Los Angeles. She's being watched from all sides. No, this is how it feels that she's being watched. Is anyone even looking at her? She's on the bus, back from the shoot, makeup still on, her hair greased back, lipstick hardened, and the palm trees moving silent, like a film unspooling. Rare Los Angeles rain freckling the window. No, nobody is watching her. That man over there is asleep, his arms crossed, his head drooping down. And this woman's on her phone, and that man's on his phone, and that woman is too, and that one, and that man to her right is praying the rosary. She sees the beads in his hand, the cross trapped in the man's fist, and if he ever looks back, looks to her, she'll look at him too, as if with a shared thought. And that will be something true, almost something to touch, she thinks. There. But maybe his eyes are closed. She can't see his eyes. That's the trouble. And then the bus skids, and the bus dips back. I'm going to skip ahead a little in that series of poems. This is still under the camera poems. This is called The Well. And I have the character of the director in here, and the director is capital D director. He's a big figure in his life. I was a bit influenced by The Confetti Trees, which is a book by Barbara Guest, who was a poet who lived in California, but associated with the New York School of Poets. And so I was reading that book, rereading that book. I've loved that book since college, when I was writing this sequence of poems. The Well. She is giving things she doesn't have. That's what the director tells her. Don't piss in the pot, he says, if you don't have the real thing. It has to be in you already. Say the line again, he tells her. She looks down for a beat, collects something within herself, looks to him with heat pumping through her, she hopes. Don't talk to me like that, she says. Don't you ever talk to me like that. She waits. He waits. Okay, okay, good, he says. Now again, and this time, gather it, let it course through you. Do you know what I mean? She tells him she does. She looks down for a moment, collects something in herself, looks back up. Don't talk to me like that, she says. Don't you ever talk to me like that. Good, he says. Now louder. Don't you ever talk to me like that. Good, good. Now this time, okay, contain it. It's coursing, but you're holding. When you speak, let it go. Got it? When you say the line, release it. She looks down, she collects, she waits, he waits, she makes him wait a little longer. Say it again, he says, again. And she makes him wait, makes him more, and then longer, a little longer. Speaking of repetition, there's so much repetition when you're in a play, or if you're on camera, doing the play night after night, saying your lines again and again. And so finding new ways to make it feel new, make it feel fresh, is something that actors work on all the time. And so, every time that I go to my own writing and I want to be writing on the same subject maybe that I have for years, thinking about how I can kind of make that feel fresh to me, how I'm thinking about that in a new way. That's really important to me too. This next poem, it's still in that sequence. I'll just read a couple more poems from that sequence called Camera Poems. This is called After Lunch. And again, a lot of dialogue here. And actually, I can show you, you can see that the dialogue, I hope I'm getting that in the view there. The dialogue is on the same line. So I have one character talking here on this side, and then the other character talking on the other side there. So I'm playing with form as I'm playing with the dialogue. After lunch, she says to the director, "Where do you want me?" New scene. He won't tell her what he wants. The camera is rolling. "Can I move around?" She says, "Yes." "Move," he says. She moves to a chair, doesn't sit in it, but stands behind, puts her hands on it. "Now what?" she says. "Just talk to me," he says. "And say what?" "Tell me where you're from," he says. "But that's not the character," she says. "Look straight into the camera," he says. "But that's not—" "Don't worry about that," he says. "Tell us something. Tell us who you are." She has never done this with the camera rolling. "My name is Joan," she says. "My sister calls me Joni. I'm from Tuscaloosa." "Just stand there," says the director. "Be you. Try to be you." She has never done this with the camera on in all her life. She stands. She is. No one says anything. The crew, a dozen of them, are silent. The director coughs. Quick. He goes back to not coughing, to listening, to watching. A warmth sweeps from her feet, travels all the way up to her face, releases itself through her eyes. She is crying. Oh God. She thinks she could do this a very long time. I liked that uh, the idea of, I still try to write about it, of someone who's used to performing, but then they find that they are in a situation like that where they're being asked to be themselves, and they're finding really genuine emotion, underneath all of this performance that they've been doing. That's a theme that I've tried to revisit quite a bit. So I'll read just one more poem from this sequence, and then I'll read just one or two more poems after that. So this next poem in the sequence is called Blind Mink, and that title will make sense as I read the poem. And this is based off of something that a friend of mine told me that she did, who is an actress, and she said she would go alone in her closet and turn off the lights and just be in the dark and recite a monologue. And I think it really kind of helped her get to a place that she wanted to get to, but that also she could feel very alone there. And I liked that. I liked thinking about kind of what a person needs to do to feel alone, whether or not they live alone. And I think about that too, because with writing, you're alone so much when you're in the act of writing. Maybe you're not. Sometimes I'm writing with other people around, certainly, but there is a good bit of alone time. There's a great bit of solitude, and so thinking about what real kind of deep solitude means is something that I think about quite a bit and continue to think about as I go through different seasons of my life. And so, yeah, I'm always interested in writing about that and in navigating solitude, and then also being with others. But for this character, it's this other level of feeling like she's performing so much, and then wanting to be alone and reciting to herself. It's a great subject for poems, I think. This is called Blind Mink. She is waving her hand in the air. She is talking, saying the same lines again and again in her dark closet with the door closed. The closet like a deep hull the inside, because this is where she begins to understand the language of what she is saying, each syllable. This is what a teacher once told her. Think only of what you're saying, act on the lines, not between. She is forcing herself to think only the monologue's words, their meaning, even though this is her 100th time repeating. Then she ends. She stops. Make your mind blank. Blank mind. Blank mind. She has her own mantra to help her end, to find a vastness, an inner clearing. Blank mind. Blind mink. Ink lid. Kid link. Mid blank. Now she'll sit a long time silent. She won't even open the door. This is how the words empty. Her mind goes bare, and then she imagines a great storm. Leaves gather, plume, the trees knock against themselves, falling over, disappearing, all the roots in the earth, the ground moving, the roads rolling like carpets, vanishing, and the sky too vanishing. There's a lot in this book about um, finding finding a music, but also finding a kind of silence. There's a poem in here called "The Second Silence," finding a kind of silence beneath the silence. So again, thinking of that kind of solitude. That earlier poem that I read is called "The Well." Thinking of that place where we can go, where we have those great inner resources. That's something that I think about quite a bit. I'm going to read just two more poems. These are not in the uh, sequence of camera poems that I just read from. These are short lyrics on their own. This cover, by the way, I wanted to mention is absolutely beautiful, and it's a close up of the painter Paul Klee's Fish Magic. So it's a detail of that painting. And again, many thanks to LSU Press for their design. And I love this cover, and I hear that from readers as well. So I'm just I wanted to mention that. This next poem, I'll read two more, is again one of the older ones that I decided to keep for the book. That tells me something when it has that kind of staying power for me. And it's called Stradivarius. And so a Stradivarius, in this case, it's a violin, but it's a stringed instrument that was made by the Italian craftsman and instrument maker Antonio Stradivari. In the late 17th and early 18th centuries. And he made over 1,000 stringed instruments. And we have hundreds still now, and they're very coveted instruments, beautifully made. And so I went to a concert in Iowa City years ago, and the violinist was playing a Stradivarius, and I wrote this poem afterwards. This poem is also thinking a lot about memory and how do we memorialize the things that we want to truly remember, but know that we won't. How do we still memorialize those things? And also kind of listening for the music, maybe when we're not in a place to always hear it, if you know what I mean. I bet you do. So this is called Stradivarius. And you can see too, I want to show you the form. It's in these 3-line stanzas, and each stanza has 2 longer lines and then a third line that's shorter. So I really, the form kind of came very organically and helps, I think, with the movement of the poem. For the last time, not knowing it is, she sight reads the dead man's sonata, hearing in each note the opposite silence, the yank of her bow from the A string. Most days She won't think of the music or suffer its absence. A small death when one doesn't remember to remember an absent thing. She won't speak of the music and will commemorate it when she doesn't remember it. When she hears a minor chord in the sound of talk from the next room and takes her son on her lap and repeats to him a word she has always loved, though she can't remember where she read it. That line about that I just read, most days she won't think of the music or suffer its absence, a small death when one doesn't remember to remember an absent thing, I think is kind of almost the thesis of the poem. um, Thinking about, that we've had this all of these great experiences within us. I think a lot of the book is about that, having these great experiences that have happened and not being able to relive them, right? But wanting to remember them, wanting, how do they stay in us? How do we keep them within us? That's all really important to these poems. And I think that poetry does that. I think that poems can really slow things down so that we can remember them. And that is one of the main reasons why I go to poetry, to read it and to write it. I'll end my reading with one more poem, and it's a short poem. I'll show it to you on the page. There are a few elegies in this book, and this is one of them. And a friend wrote to me recently, and he had just read it, and just really, really, this poem was speaking to him for different reasons, different things going on in his life at the moment, and it speaks to me too. And so I wanted to end with it, and then I know we'll have a Q&A after I finish reading. This is called Elegy for Your Contrition. No one knows this house as you do. Its puckered brick, flowers pricking through the driveway's fractured concrete. Turning away, no one makes you. Only you can do that. The shame would be to let turning away mean nothing. Let the place slip through zones of memory, down bottomless holes. Should that ever happen, let it be your own trouble. Let it be your great guilt to confess. I'll end there. Thank you so much.
Okay, are we ready for some questions?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right. Our first question here is from Angela in the comments. Question is, do you think that genre differences are perhaps exaggerated and that genres have more in common than they have differences?
Yes, I definitely think so. When I first started writing prose, which is just something that's not in lines, um, I was thinking of them as poems. So for me, there wasn't that difference. And I still, some of the great novelists too. I when I think of them, the first thing I think of is, oh, they're a poet, instead of thinking they wrote this novel, or I just kind of, it's all together in my head. So I absolutely think that, and I still write that way. And many times I'll start something and I won't necessarily know how I'm going to think about it later, whether I'll think of it as a poem or a story or part of a novel. What I do usually have a sense of, though, is if it's in lines. That and that doesn't mean I won't change it to prose later. But I do usually have a sense when I first start writing, I can usually feel I usually have some sort of like feeling about lines, that something feels like it's in lines to me. Um, but like I said too, I also will take prose and put it into lines and then back into prose. That really helps my sentences. I recommend that for all of my students. We do that as an exercise where they take their prose, put it into lines, and then edit that way and revise that way, and then put it back into the prose. And it really can show you so many things about what you're doing at the level of the sentence. So yes, I absolutely think that's true.
Thank you. Our next question is from Kay. Question is, what a beautiful reading, first of all. And could you talk about how motherhood has affected your relationship to form? And the kind of follow-up to that is, have you been leaning more towards poems in recent years because of fractured time?
Ooh, yeah, that's interesting, and something I maybe need to think through even more. um, yeah, I have found even in just the time that I have writing time, it's not it tends to be more in spurts. I do wake up very early to write so that I can have that time of solitude. I call it setting the table for the muse. I've called it that for a long time because it helps me think about what I need to do so that I can prepare to write. But anyone can think about it this way with something creative that they're doing or something that you need to kind of prepare to do. And so for me, setting the table for the muse, preparing for the muse to come means that for me it means early in the morning, even though I don't like for it to always mean early in the morning. It used to mean late at night. I definitely used to be a late night writer. And it means that I usually read a little bit before I write, and that I have a certain lamp on my desk that I use. It means that I'm doing certain things to kind of prepare myself to say, okay, now I'm in that mode. But life doesn't always work like that, and that's ideally what happens. But many times what happens is maybe I miss that early morning time. My children are small, and so sleep can be hard. Some nights it's hard to come by. I have a few poems about sleeping or not sleeping in the book. And so I found myself sometimes I'd be writing at 3 o'clock in the morning because I was up with the baby. And I think that that is a beautiful thing to have those different seasons in your life where you're in these I don't know, these different uh, modes, these different zones, right? Whether you're sleep deprived or in this kind of dreamlike state or in this early morning state. And I absolutely think that that's such an interesting comment. I absolutely think that that had a lot to do with me writing more poems with just my own time, feeling more fractured, but in this really great way where I then had these kind of spurts of time to work on that. Now, when I'm working on a new novel now, I'm working on poems, I'm working on new stories, I'm always working on stories. And so even with the novel, if I just have 10 minutes, I'll sit down and try to write a paragraph. And what's great about that is that you can think of that as a poem too, right? Like I'm sitting down and I'm going to not that every poem comes in 10 minutes. That's amazing. Sometimes they do, but not all the time. But you can take those 10-15 minutes that you have and do something with them, or just write lines and tell yourself these are lines that I'm going to write for the day. And whether or not you consider yourself to be a writer, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to do. It's a wonderful experience with life to slow it down that way and record it. But thank you for that great question.
Thank you. Our next question is from Marjorie. Question is, your writing seems to come from a deeply personal place, but you keep it open and accessible to the reader nonetheless. Do you think about this part of the process, or is it innate?
Yeah, I think that that happens, that just happens organically, you know? I love fiction too because I can take some things that happen in my life, but I can bend them. You know, in nonfiction, which I also enjoy writing, we have a kind of contract with the reader that the things that we're writing about happened, or we understand them as our truth. We understand them as facts. With fiction and with poetry, we don't have that kind of contract. And we can still take things from our lives and we can bend them. And that's something that I keep returning to in both fiction and poetry because I think my imagination, with when it comes to my own life, I tend to want to use my imagination, maybe too much sometimes. So that's what's always appealed to me about fiction and about poetry.
Thank you. Our next question is from Lisa. Question is, while writing and pausing since your last book, when did you feel this work taking shape as a collection?
Yeah, I think really just in the past few years, you know, I wanted to be very careful that I wasn't, and I think about this for story collections as well. I wanted to be very careful that I didn't simply take, 50 to 60 poems and I love them all and then put them together and then that's my book. I think that can be a good way to put a book together in terms of you want to love the work, but I also wanted them to be speaking to one another, and for it to make sense for them all to be together. And I feel the same way about short story collections of mine, that I want them to really be speaking to one another. And so I feel like I was waiting until I could I could see themes emerge. And sometimes to see themes emerge, really what you need to do is to just keep writing, and keep going with the draft. Same thing with a novel. So much of seeing what you're writing about is getting it down on the page and then going back and looking and saying, it's here, it's here. As long as you are writing from an organic place, a place that I have that poem called "The Well," the that place that is like the inner well of you. If you are writing from that place, and we don't all write from that place every time. It can be hard to get there sometimes, but hopefully we're writing from that place most of the time. If you are writing from that place and getting yourself to that place and setting the table for the muse so that you can get to that place in yourself, then you will see as the pages grow, whether those are poems or pages of a novel, that you are seeing the things that occupy your brain there, every day. And that's what I meant too when I said, your obsessions and your passions are in the work, and you can't really help it. So if you are really truly writing from that place, that well that's inside you, that will keep happening. It will show itself to you. It will emerge. So that's what I was looking for, when I was putting this collection together. I was writing more and more poems, and sometimes I would just say I'm writing lines, let's not even call it a poem. Let's say I'm writing lines and seeing what emerged from there. And many times that act of writing is what would get me there, is just letting those lines happen on the page, trying to write from that deep well within myself, and then seeing what I had in front of me. And then when I started to see the themes really coming together, that's when I decided, I could see a manuscript coming together. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Sort of as a follow-up question to that, in terms of future projects, are you feeling another collection taking shape? What are you thinking about doing next? Might you go in a different genre direction? What's next?
Yeah, I have new stories. I'm always working on short stories, and I have the collection that I published, and I publish many of those individually, and then working on new poems, publishing them individually too. But you know, thinking about kind of where they're all starting to overlap, letting them talk back to me. And then I'm working on two different novels now, which was not the plan to work on two different novels at the same time. But I got to what I think is a halfway point in one, and then had an idea for another one. So now I'm working on two different novels, which it feels like a lot, but and it is, but what I always say is if you really love that, if you enjoy it, if you feel the energy of it and the heat of it and you love doing it, then that's what you should be working on. Sometimes I have to let things go when I can feel that I'm not fully in it, when I feel like I'm not fully invested in it, when I don't feel emotionally attached to it, whatever that means. That means different things for different people, but I've come to learn what that can mean for me, feeling attached to something. And so I decide to let things go when I don't have that feeling of attachment anymore. And I don't mean, kind of feeling bogged down on a particular writing day, because we all have those days, and we're all going to have days or weeks where we just feel like we're getting through it. But I just mean overall, I need to feel attached to something. I need to feel excited about it, and I need to feel the energy of it so that when I go into the paragraph or when I go into the lines, I can get right back in. That's really important to me so that I can feel immersed, because I want the reader to feel that too. And if the reader's not, if I'm not feeling that, the reader's not going to be feeling that the way that I want them to. So that's really what I look for. And I'm excited about all of these projects and both of these novels that I'm working on. So that means that I need to keep with it and keep doing it. And being excited about something like that is a real gift. It really is. I'm very grateful for it. I'm really grateful that after years of writing, I still love the act of writing. That's just incredible to me. I've been doing it for what feels like a long time now, and I still, this morning I sat down to write, and I was so happy to do that and to have those inner resources that I wanted to write out and think through. And so I really am grateful for having a passion like that, and for being able to do things like this.
Excellent. Well, that is our last question, and we're getting close to the end of the hour. So we'll go ahead and let you go, but we can say thank you and goodbye to the audience.
Thank you all so much. Really appreciate you joining me.